Whipple Family Misadventures Book 14, Whose Fault It Was.
All right, you guys know what to do,
Tom said, coming out of the back room and handing over buckets and several rags. Next to him, Silver nodded immediately, which Shadow thought he might have just been doing it to save face.
Wash the windows.
They had found out that there was going to be some kind of crossover in the comic books that they read coming up soon, and if they wanted to understand what was going on, they had to buy all 12 different issues to get the full story. Unfortunately, their dad said if they wanted all those comics, they would have to earn the money to get it themselves. Tom had offered to pay them $10 each if they washed every single window of the police station. It wasn't enough for all the comics that they wanted, but at least it was a start. With a nod, Tom glanced toward the windows. Their dad had already left after his shift, leaving them there to earn the money.
everyone, and I expect it to be a good job, not a quick one. Inside and out.
Once they had done that, Shadow carried both buckets back to the main room.
I'll wash inside and you wash outside?
His brother scowled.
Why?
Because you can fly, and I can't. I need a chair to stand on, and those are only inside.
He could have dragged a chair outside, but he didn't want to deal with that. It was easier to do it this way.
Oh, okay.
Using his powers to lift one of the buckets, the gray hedgehog trotted out of the main door. Yanking a chair over, Shadow started to wash a window. To his dismay, it was extremely dirty, enough that dirt and gunk got on his gloves. He seriously hoped those comics would be worth this. A few minutes later, Tom came out of his office, his sunglasses on.
I'll be right back.
He announced out loud to no one in particular and walked out. Pausing, Shadow snuck a look around. Without Tom or his dad here, that meant that it was only them and that guy Eric who was writing something over at his desk. He still wasn't sure what he thought about that human. On one hand, Shadow had not forgotten their first meeting, but then again, he had given them food and cards about those interesting animals. But that didn't mean Shadow liked or even trusted him. Eric saw him looking at him and offered a friendly smile. Quickly, Shadow turned back around and went back to rubbing the rag against the window glass.
Are you doing all right there?
Shadow pretended like he didn't know he was being addressed.
Rather nice of Tom to give you guys this work. What are you going to do with the money? Get $10 worth of candy bars?
Another time, Shadow would have thought it was awful of this human to have been listening in when they asked Tom repeatedly for something to do for money. But then again, this police station was rather small. Even humans whose ears were not that good could have heard them asking.
Careful, your bucket is going to fall over.
Stopping, Shadow looked over the bucket and saw that it was. He didn't need it spilling all over the floor and carefully adjusted it. Too late. He realized that he had responded to Eric and given away that he had been listening. Sneaking a peek over at him, the man was still looking in his direction.
Want the piece of candy?
He held one out. Swallowing, Shadow stared at it for a second and then jumped off his chair to come get it. That got him a brighter smile.
Don't worry, I don't bite.
Eric said gently, handing it over.
I just don't want you guys to be scared or upset to be around me. I work with your, dad, and I think you should both be comfortable here.
Popping the candy in his mouth, Shadow regarded him carefully. If he had known that Eric would have wanted to talk, he would have taken being outside instead. He wasn't sure if it was too late to go out and demand that Silver switch places with him.
There was something I was curious about.
Eric never got to finish his sentence, as there was a loud shriek from outside. Recognizing it as his brother, Shadow shot off before the man could even get to his feet. Outside on the ground, he found his little brother clutching his left foot and wailing loudly.
What happened?
Silver was gasping for breath as tears rolled down his face.
I stepped on.
He motioned toward the bottom of his boot. Leaning down to look, Shadow noticed a thin gray nail sticking out of the rubber. That wasn't supposed to be there.
Okay, hold still.
Shadow said and reached out, grabbed it and yanked as hard as he could until it came out. That only made Silver scream louder.
Stop!
He howled. Behind him, Shadow heard the front door of the police station bang open and Eric appeared around the corner, confusion written into his features.
What is going on out here?
Pulling off his boot, Silver stared at his white sock as a red spot slowly began to soak through the fabric. Blinking at it, Shadow looked down at the long, sharp nail in his hand and noticed that the end was also smeared in blood. Horrified, he dropped it, as if it had burned his fingers. Silver only continued crying. Suddenly, Eric stepped over him and reached for Silver.
It's okay. We're gonna handle this.
The human said calmly and picked up his brother, carrying him inside. Making sure to grab Silver's disregarded boot first, Shadow followed him inside.
Let me see.
Eric set Silver down on the edge of the desk and peeled his sock off and then stopped, frowning down at the gray hedgehog's foot.
You should not have pulled that out, but okay, it's not that bad.
He grabbed several tissues from a box on the desk and pressed them against the wound.
Who do you call for this?
Eric demanded, and Shadow realized he was talking to him again.
Can he go to the regular hospital?
Slowly, Shadow shrugged, as he didn't have the slightest idea if they were allowed to go to the hospital or not. That seemed to make the man upset as he narrowed his eyes.
Well, don't just stand there. Your brother is injured and is bleeding. Answer me, call your dad, do something.
Horror raced through the black hedgehog as he realized what Eric was saying. He wasn't being helpful, just standing there not doing anything. And even worse, he was the one who yanked the nail out of his brother's foot. He was making things worse. Starting to shake, he took out his phone and pressed buttons until the call went through for his dad. Even worse, his words had all disappeared. Shadow couldn't say anything when his dad answered and instead just burst into tears himself. Eric stared in disbelief. It was bad enough that one of those kids was clutching his bleeding foot and crying, now the other one was turning hysterical. Reaching over, he snatched the phone out of Shadow's hand.
Wait.
What's happening? What's wrong?
Your kid. The gray one. Silver. He stepped on a nail and his foot is bleeding. Do you take him to a hospital? Should I call an ambulance?
No, he needs to go to the clinic, the vet clinic. That one Medi owns. I'll meet you there.
Well, that did make sense. They were animal kids and a veterinarian probably knew more about taking care of them than a human doctor would.
Got it.
Eric said and snapped the phone shut. It had been over a decade since he had done that, and it was rather satisfying.
Come on, kid.
He said, picking Silver up again, taking a moment to properly situate him in arms, keeping the wad of tissues pressed against his foot. It helped when the kid wrapped both arms around his neck. Good thing he was lighter than he looked.
Your dad's gonna meet us at the vet clinic?
Eric was nearly out the door when he realized the other one wasn't following him, and was still just standing there frozen in the middle of the room, tears on his muzzle. Frustrated, Eric came back. What was this one's name? He couldn't remember.
Hey kid, you coming or not?
From her desk, Caitlin frowned.
He can stay here with me, if he needs to.
Snapping his fingers in front of those red eyes got his attention.
Are you coming? Or are you staying? I'm leaving with your brother, right now.
For a moment, it didn't look like he was going to do anything, and then out of nowhere, headed for the door and looked back, like Eric was the one slowing them down. Thankfully, the vet clinic wasn't that far away from the police station. The one good thing about a small town, people could walk almost everywhere and it wasn't that big of a deal. Eric burst in the front door, completely out of breath.
Please tell me you treat alien kids.
He panted, hoping they wouldn't think he was crazy. This was the only veterinary clinic in town. He hoped there wasn't another one that he didn't know about. The receptionist and other people in the waiting room looked startled. Finally, the receptionist stood up.
I'll go get the doctor,
she said and went into the back. Less than a minute later, a woman in scrubs came out. Eric knew she was Tom's wife as he had seen her around a few times, but he had to look at her name tag for her name. Maddie. She reached for the hedgehog in his arms.
What happened?
Stepped on a nail.
Maddie removed the tissues from his foot and nodded briskly.
Has anyone contacted Wade? Does he know what's happening?
Yeah, he's on his way. Can I wash my hands?
While he didn't know that much about alien hedgehogs, he didn't want to find out if anything would happen if he didn't wash up after handling an open wound. Coming back out, Maddie had already taken Silver away, and everyone else in the waiting room had gone back to whatever they were doing. It seemed like he was free to return to the police station. And then he noticed the other hedgehog, the black and red one, huddled on the floor, tucked between part of the wall and a large plant. While he couldn't be sure from where he was standing, it didn't look like that hedgehog was doing too well. Eric didn't know what to do. These were not his kids and they were not his responsibility. Maybe it was this small town and its ways were getting to him, but he didn't feel right leaving him alone, even if his dad was going to be here in a minute.
Hey kid, you alright?
The hedgehog didn't even look up at him. Behind them, the door flew open and without even looking, Eric knew exactly who it was.
Where's Silver?
Wade demanded, out of breath. Even though it had been less than an hour since Eric had seen him when he was leaving work, the other man looked completely different and like he was ready to wrestle a bear to find out where his kids were.
Maddie took him that way.
Eric said with a gesture toward the exam rooms.
I don't think it was too bad. She doesn't seem extremely worried about it.
Wade looked around.
Where's Shadow?
When he found him, Wade went down on one knee in an attempt to coax him out from his hiding spot.
What happened to him?
The sudden realization that he might have contributed to this situation was like a club to the back of the head. That maybe he should have been more patient, that not everyone handled stress well.
I think while trying to get him to help me, I might have upset him.
Wade didn't say anything as his attention was elsewhere, but Eric felt the cold front moving regardless. Feeling that he had outlived his usefulness and his presence was not being helpful, Eric awkwardly excused himself, walked out and returned to work. Back at the station, he couldn't stop thinking about what happened. He knew that he was probably never going to be best friends with those kids, that they would never come running to give him hugs or anything, and that was okay. But from the way that had snarled at him the first time he met them, he didn't want to have to worry about being in danger of being bitten. Seeing as it was an extremely small town and that he was going to see him, it would just be easier if none of them growled when they saw him. This sure was one weird town that he had moved to. When Tom finally returned, he frowned, noticing the abandoned cleaning supplies on the floor.
Where'd the kids go?
To go visit your wife at her clinic. Silver stepped on a nail and it went through his shoe.
Poor kid. Is he okay?
Shrugging, Eric reached for the small boot that had been left behind. Turning it in his hand, he saw how thin the sole was, the puncture mark where the nail had gone through.
Not sure. The black and red one, Shadow, is everything okay with him?
Yes.
I mean, sometimes it seems like...
He's a kid on a different planet, mostly surrounded by people who aren't his species. In a culture he doesn't understand. He also gets very nervous around people he doesn't know. His social skills need some work, but honestly, he's allowed to be quiet and shy.
Anything else Eric had been about to say died before on his tongue. It had never occurred to him what it would have been like, being alien kid on a planet full of people that weren't like him and being forced to adapt to that.
Right.
He muttered, as thankfully the phone in Tom's office rang and the sheriff went to answer it. Turning the boot over in his hand, Eric knew what he would be doing after work. Eric had never been to their house before, although he did know where it was. He had no idea how those kids lived inside Wade's house and was honestly a bit curious, but knew it was none of his business and would be rude to ask. He had sent Wade a text so they knew he was coming, but he hadn't said all of what he was bringing. Reaching the front door, he knocked twice and stood back to wait. A few moments later, Wade answered. Behind him in the living room, Eric caught a glance of the two hedgehogs stretched out on the couch. Silver's foot was wrapped up in bandages and it looked like he was asleep. As for the darker hedgehog, Eric couldn't tell if he was awake or not.
I'm sorry about what happened today. I didn't mean to upset him.
Eric said before the other man could ever get a word out.
Are they okay? Should I come in and apologize?
The look on Wade's face was a mix of gratitude that he had helped one of his kids and annoyed that he had upset the other one.
They're both asleep, but they'll be okay. Silver was lucky. The nail didn't go too deep into his foot.
That's good. I hope his foot feels better soon. Also, this was left at the station.
He handed over the boot and then picked up the medium-sized box he brought with him.
And I wanted to give them something.
You didn't have to.
I want to, if you're okay with it. When you were gone, I let Silver play on my Nintendo Switch while he was at the station for the day. And he really seemed to enjoy it. And it's almost brand new. Plus, it's just laying around at my house, and I don't have that much use for it.
That was partially a lie, but Wade didn't need to know that. The other man seemed stunned.
Are you sure? Aren't these expensive?
I am, and don't worry about it. Also, the only game it has currently is Mario Kart. but it can hold a lot more.
There was a beat and then Wade slowly took it, looking down at the packaging for the Switch before he finally looked up again.
You really want them to like you.
I really want them to not snarl at me every time I see them. Plus, I like giving people gifts. I need to get home to my dog, but please tell him I'm sorry and have a good night.
As soon as Wade thanked him and shut the door, Eric walked off and started in the direction of his own home, feeling the tension leave his shoulders. That had gone better than he had hoped for it. It had been unfortunate how he bumbled the interaction earlier that day, but hopefully that would make things better. If not, he would go back to the old faithful of offering donuts when he saw them and continue to keep trying.